Welcome to Hard Truth Stories. My name is Todd. I am 28 years old, and I met Beth, 24, at the gym 3 years ago. We hit it off right away and began dating. We moved in together after our 1-year dating anniversary and began planning for our future together. Our plan was to work hard and buy a house in a nice neighborhood and start a family. This would require that both of us work full-time and limit luxury expenses and trips. It would be worth it when we could buy our dream home and start a family. After 6 months, Beth began talking about all of the women on social media making videos of their lives and how she thought that she could do that as well. I told Beth that all of that was make-believe and fake, and most of those women were just putting on a show and really didn't make much money or even represent their real lives. Beth said that her mother and her mother's friends encouraged her to do it as well and not limit herself to just a normal job, as they put it. I never really liked Beth's mother, Jean, as she was very materialistic and more worried about how much money people made and what their social status was, as opposed to their character or happiness. She had been divorced 3 times, as she never was satisfied with what her ex-husbands gave her and would endlessly complain that all men were not worth her time or attention. Now she was in her late 40s and only ever got asked out by men that she considered not worthy of her. After first meeting Jean, I wondered how Beth had turned out not like her mother. This was answered when I met her father, Mark. He was a kind and hard-working man that Jean had divorced a few years after Beth was born, for no other reason than to say that she was bored. Mark worked hard to provide for his new family, dedicating all his time and effort to providing everything he could for his wife and daughter, but endlessly complained that she needed a new car, or expensive trips, or new clothes. Mark would simply say that they had a family now, and they needed to focus on their daughter and not worry about all of those things, as it is family and people that were important, and not status or flashing money around. A few weeks later, Mark called me and asked me to meet. He had something to talk about what was going on. We met at Mark's apartment and sat down to talk. Mark said that he knew what was going on with Beth. As I suspected, it was Jean and her friends, who were also divorced and very unhappy with their lives, that were getting in Beth's ear. Mark had a talk with Beth, and she said that it was Jean who was constantly trying to convince her that she was trapped in her marriage with me, and that I was holding her back. They said she could be an independent woman and social media star. They also were saying that having a family and children was just a trap, and it would make her unhappy. Beth went to bed confused and frustrated. All of the women in her life were telling her that what she had wanted her whole life, a home and family, was wrong. The men in her life were telling her that family was what was important. The next day, Beth quit her job to become a social media star. Even though I disagreed, I supported her and encouraged her as best I could. Every day she would make videos and posts, yet her followers and subscribers only went up very slowly. Beth quickly realized that it was hard work to come up with original ideas every day. Beth still had her standards and dressed modestly, which was rare for social media creators. Beth also began seeing more and more comments on her videos and posts from men saying and asking things that were inappropriate. No matter how many she reported and blocked, more and more would just keep posting. Even most of the women posting comments were just criticizing Beth or disagreeing with everything she said. Finally, after 2 months, Beth had over 10,000 followers. She was still far away from making any money, and the toxic environment on the social media platforms made her break down in tears each night. Beth came to me and apologized and said I had been right and that she had deleted all of her accounts. She knew in the back of her mind that her mother and her friends were toxic and self-centered, but it was her mother, and all she wanted from her was some love and affection that she never got. Beth is now applying for jobs and wants nothing more than to buy our first home and start our family. We had a family dinner at her mother's house, and as usual, the negativity and criticism of everyone and everything was in full form for Jean. Beth had finally had enough and told Jean that her negativity and endless complaining were no longer going to be tolerated. Jean stood there silently with surprise. Beth went on to say that people were most important to her, not status or money, like Jean had always said. Beth told her mother that any contact in the future with her would be positive and supportive, and to go get counseling if she ever wanted to see her grandchildren. Beth took my hand and we walked out and into the car and home. But we got home, Beth's phone rang, and we saw that it was Jean. Beth had a determined look on her face and set the phone down in the kitchen, and we headed off to get ready for bed. 2 months later, Beth was working from home in her new job when we got the news she was pregnant. We had a small party with family and friends. Jean was not invited but had been posting on social media that she was working on herself. A few days later, Jean called Beth. Beth coldly answered the phone. Jean had a softer tone in her voice than Beth had ever heard. Jean said that she had been working on herself and hoped to be a part of our family again. After a short conversation, Beth ended the call. It was a start, but Jean had a long way to go. In the end, we cannot change anyone, only ourselves to be happy and content in our lives.